Thank you, members of the City Council and Mayor Bayless, and staff, and for the city, everyone. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present our overview for the Carnegie Library Historic Structures Report. It's really been an honor to be involved with this project. It's a beautiful building. It's really a treasure for Xenia's historic architectural legacy here. So just a quick overview I've got a PowerPoint presentation it's going to summarize the Historic Structures Report. Basically commenced work on the project in July. We started with our documentation of the building. We conducted numerous site visits to get to know the building and understand it during the summer and the fall. We had our structural engineers, an expert in dealing with historic structures, come and visit the site in the fall as well. We kicked off our project in July with an initial meeting with Mary, with Josie, and with Barb Bradfield, who's been a tremendous force in spearheading this effort. So I'd like to thank Josie and Barb for that, for getting the project launched and getting the building designated, listed in the National Register, and also specifically for allowing us to get the original drawings of the building. I think we had to go to one of the previous owners of the building who lived in Southeast Ohio, and we were able to track those down, and they were instrumental in helping us document the building accurately. So thank you, Josie, for that. We've spent quite a lot of time getting to know the building and understanding it, seeing what the conditions are, and putting together our recommendations for treatments. That's what I'd like to share with you here today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and share this with you tonight. I think, the character of the building, as it was originally envisioned, was as a community facility. And I think looking at this building is certainly a nice civic project. And I think there's an aspect of the community involved. So we're happy to be able to present it here in front of the council. So with that, I'd like to give you an overview of the process here of the Historic Structures Report. Basically, just for those of you, I'm sure you guys are not so familiar with this, we actually did a presentation on historic structures reports at the Heritage Ohio Conference in Cincinnati in October. But essentially, the purpose of a historic structures report really is to provide a long-term guide for the future work on the building. You look at the building, you document it, you gather you quantify it, you put together the graphic documentation, drawings, and look at research the building's history so you understand how the building evolved in time. And importantly, you have a chance to take a look at the building's condition. That effort in documenting, researching, being on site, taking a look around, putting together recommendations, then put together in this report, and it really provides a basis for how to go forward with the rehabilitation approach, if that's desired, or adaptive use approach, in a logical manner, in the most efficient manner, with the most level of understanding at the outset of a project. So the value is, it's really a primary planning document to guide the long-term future of the building, starting at the beginning. We've undertaken a comprehensive analysis of the conditions of the building. It's a basis for any physical changes that might be necessary in terms of code, adaptive use, depending upon what program is ultimately considered during the master planning phase. But this provides a baseline for that information. And I think it's important also to understand that we've done these in the past in other locations. They're often used as a mechanism to help obtain funding from various sources, including foundations or state and local federal sources. So it's an important document that helps summarize and quantify the conditions of a building. Just to let you know generally, and Mary passed out copies of the report that you have in front of you, so you actually have the report and you can have a chance to take a look at it more in depth. But basically what's in there, we put together an introduction in our methodology and our intended goals that we're undertaking here. We undertake historic archival research, both from we used some of the material that Josie had previously obtained for her National Register nomination. We also undertook a broader research to put this in the context of Carnegie libraries in the state of Ohio, how many there are and things like that. We look at it in terms of its architectural character. How much integrity is there left? Is it intact, or has it been altered significantly? We define that, and we take a look at those historic features. I think the important part, what I think everyone's looking forward to seeing here today, is the conditions. We take a look at the conditions and the materials, the systems and so forth in there, and put together recommendations for treatment options for that. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in specifically to our project here. Just in terms of the history and context, and I'm really going to give you the bulleted overview here. If you have a chance to take a look at the report, there'll be much more in-depth information in that. But the building was constructed in 1904. It was formally opened in 1906. The architect was William Kaufman from Pittsburgh. It was interesting. The lot was donated by two women who were members of the Library Association, and actually the nephew was the prominent architect. So through the connections of local people here who donated the site, they actually obtained the architect from Pittsburgh. It was used continuously as a library until 1978. It suffered some limited damage during the tornado. At that time, it led to there was a need for a larger library. So I think at that point in time, also a lot was opened as a result of that. So a new library was constructed in 1978, I believe. It was purchased to be used as a private residence in the 1980s, and ultimately was put, with Josie's efforts, on the National Register of Historic Places. So just to give you an idea of the Carnegie Library, where this fits in with the state of Ohio, there are 111 libraries built in Ohio. I think Indiana had the most. I think it was 150 or something like that. But Ohio is a significant state in terms of these. They were primarily located in smaller towns, but also in major cities as well. And a lot of them are still around, but there's certainly an important legacy of Andrew Carnegie from the United States Steel. And this is just an image of a postcard that we found here from 1907 when we were undertaking our research. Once again, I mentioned Josie was able to locate the original drawings and get them to us. I think we showed up the next day once we found out about them and picked them up, and we scanned them. So we've archived them. They're in high-resolution electronic format right now. This is just an example to show the character of the drawings at that time. We have the full set. They're included as an appendix in the report. One of the things we undertook, as I mentioned earlier in describing an HSR, we looked at the description of the site, the exterior and the interior spaces. We try to really quantify what the significant architectural features are, because if we're going to adapt, if we use it as a library or we repurpose the building for whatever, we want to retain the essential features of the space and the place. So we've defined those in the report here. And also, we've also defined things that are intrusions or non-contributing that could be removed in a future reuse of the building. Additionally, we've identified features that have been removed already, and we have documentation of those, and they should be reestablished and reincorporated back into the building. So that analysis is included in the report. Just to show you the site, it's a significant site, very prominent. It's large and open around three sides of the building here. You can see the primary view of the site from the front along Church Street. There's a significant setback from the front of the property. Really along the side, along the western edge of the property, there's a large space here. The rear of the property is where the current parking is also located, along the eastern side of the site as well. So the site utilities are above ground on this. The electrical service is provided here from the rear of the property. Everything's above ground, provided that way. So if we're adaptively reusing the site, we'd likely need more. Certainly, the parking's in poor condition right now. We'd likely need more parking space incorporated in a sympathetic way. We certainly need to have handicap accessible parking that's designated, and we certainly need an accessible route to the building to that. But this site is generally level, and there's a lot of potential and flexibility, and it really features the building prominently because it's set back so far. Looking at the primary facade of the building, it's a southern elevation. You can really see the architectural character of the building. It's a classical revival style. The key features are really the main entrance right here, the entry portico here with a pediment on top, the columns that are here. You see some of the details here, the bracketed pediment with a relief ornament here, the tops of the columns. And throughout the building, there's a lot of cast ornament in terracotta that takes advantage. You can see the shadow and the play of light on the building. And a lot of natural finish wood. These are the main entrance doors on the southern facade. The main materials that you have in the building, the base of the building is limestone. And it continues around the building, and we're going to see the other facades. But the building is set atop a limestone base. The primary facade material is a buff color brick, but there are limestone accents here. And then we have terracotta ornament at the cornice at the top, capping the building, and terracotta ornament, which is it's a clay material that was allowed for a lot of ornamentation that was cast in molds and then applied to the veneer of the building. So it was used in these types of buildings of that era, the early 20th century, to provide a sense of dignified civic character to the building. The western and eastern elevations are basically mirror images of each other. We're looking at the western facade. You can see the plan shape of the building. It's really a T with the main front two-story part of the building with a one-story leg of the T in the back that's flanked on both sides by one-story, more utilitarian wings on the back. But You can see on these sides, you have large three bay windows that are flanked by single bay windows. Once again, the same character, you know, the limestone on the bottom, the brick in the middle, and the terracotta capping the building on the top. And once again, the beautiful ornament that's really intact and adds to the character of the building significantly. The rear of the facade here, the northern part of the building, these have smaller windows. The larger windows on the side facades that we just saw were because the reading rooms were located behind them to allow large amounts of natural light in there. These are where the volume of the stacks was located right here, this two-story part and a leg of the T, and we had single windows on these bays as well, which were support facilities. This was a circulation, or I think a circulation area where they reviewed the books, and this was another support space over here. You can see there's been an addition in 1935. A garage was put on the back that's one story. It's really non-compatible with the classical character of the building. There's also a one-story storage shed on the back. It's also a non-compatible intrusion to the building that really should go away. There's also an enclosed access to the basement. And there was an exterior airway that was open that has since been enclosed as well. So these are some features that are what we consider non-contributing elements that ultimately should, in our opinion, probably be removed from the building. And then once again, even on the rear facade, there are decorative elements there emphasizing the architectural character as well. In terms of the interior character, the basement was, you know, I was surprised how much space there was in the basement, and I was also surprised in what kind of good condition the basement was in. The building is built really solidly. I have a structural engineer come out. I've taken to buildings where the timber, you know, taverns where the timber frame structures are, you know, they're made out of oak, but they've been rotting, or, you know, the roof's been opened up to the elements. So I was grateful. He was grateful that I took him to this building because this was easy for him. It was structurally, he considered it structurally very sound, and we'll talk more about that. But the basement was a large series of larger spaces. This was actually, when you take a look at the report, the original drawings are in there. There was an auditorium space, which has since been enclosed by non-original partitions, but you can see the beams up here, which were decorative, you know, and some that are concealed behind here. There's still some original doors and transoms in the basement as well. There's a large hall and things, so there are some. The basement's in structurally good condition. And the walls are generally, the concrete floors, you have glazed tile walls around the perimeter, which you can see here, you know, kind of really smooth. And so anyway, a lot of potential usable space there. But the really significant architectural space that defines the interior character of the building is the main space on the first floor level here. It's a grand civic space. You can just take a look at the classical features of the building. You know, the columns here, these are faux marble. They're probably a Keen's cement with plaster, but it's been decorated, you know, it's been constructed to be the appearance of marble, as has the wainscoting around here. You know, you have ornamental plasterwork of the columns, all this ornamental plasterwork at the top. This is a 25-foot high space in there, so it's a grand space. But what's incredible about the building is the quality of the craftsmanship that's inherent into the materials here. There are some things that have been removed. There was a desk in here. This was really the circulations, the place where you would check out books in this area, so there was a desk here. The floor, we go in the building, and maybe some of the pictures in the report show there were hexagonal tiles that are original that have since been covered up by linoleum. But really, the integrity of the space is there. There has been some damage, and we can talk more particularly about that. But really, the damage is only associated with water ingress. The areas of the building which haven't been disturbed by water are artistically and structurally intact. Another important feature of the interior space is that the light, natural light from the surrounding reading rooms comes in because there are large windows, you know, basically like interior window and door systems here that are naturally finished wood. They're still original. That allow light in from the flanking western and eastern bays into that main space here. This is a view looking back at the entrance. You can see once again the natural finished wood and the glazing, the columns, you know, all the ornamental detail up here. And really taking a look at the details. You get into the space, it's really astonishing at the amount of ornament that's been put in here. You know, the column capitals you can see. At the rear of the main space there's a detail where there was a clock. You can see the ornamental plasterwork here. The ornamental plasterwork that's around the top of the frieze in there. And here is the tile that I mentioned, that hexagonal tile it's there intact, it's just been covered up. And looking up into the vaulted ceiling, once again, it's a 25 feet high space in that volume. So it's a grand civic type space that was meant to confer dignity onto the folks that were entering into the library space. And really one of the most beautiful features of the building is the interior skylight at the top of that central circulation space. So really, the thing I'm trying to emphasize is the quality of the materials and the craftsmanship that went into this building and how generally sound it is at this point in time. These are some shots of the interior space of the vestibule, the main entrance, just some details of the transom above the main door. And looking opposite of the transom, you can see the inscribed Carnegie Library with the date of 1905. And a view of the stairs that lead up from the basement. Even the stairs that went to the basement had a wainscot and a chair rail with a simulated marble and a nice ornamental wood rail and everything that's there intact. The reading rooms are the rooms I talked about that really are the eastern and the western bays that are 1.5 stories tall. Just to give you a sense, these are like 14 and 15-foot spaces. So even though it's not the grand space, the main central, there's still a lot of high volume space in here, a lot of natural light in here, obviously to provide the function, to support the function of reading. So these are what the rooms look like in there. And there are some ornamental features in those spaces as well at the ceiling. There's some original moldings where the original light fixtures were. There's some moldings of ornamental plasterwork around the perimeter of those spaces. And one of the most interesting spaces that I've got to observe in this space is the rear stack room, which is on the back of the T at the northern end of the building. It's a 2-story, it's really a 1.5-story space where the stacks were located, and they came up between, they were supported and went up to the full height of the second level there. But what's interesting is they had these tempered glass floors that allowed the natural light to come into the ground level, the first floor level of that. So if you were looking at books at the first floor level, you had light coming above in from the windows there. And those are still there too, and they seem to be in pretty good shape as well. And there are also some original shelving units for the books. These, the ones that you see right here, are I don't think appear to be original, but there are some that are in that space. So those are the architectural features that we talked about, the sizzle for the project here. But in terms of the assessment, what we look at were the site, the exterior, the interior, the building systems, and the structure, and we put together recommendations for those. I think I gave you the overview for the site, in terms of providing an accessible route to the building and some enhanced parking. I think we'd also want to regrade around the building. In terms of the exterior, it's generally in good condition. The sandstone, there's some staining here, but it's in physical condition, it's good. These are like garden variety things that need to be dealt with in terms of cleaning with chemicals or the gentlest means necessary. But structurally and physically, they're in good condition. The brick wall system, the main facade of all the facades around there is in generally good condition. There have been some areas where there have been non-appropriate mortar pointing. There's been some caulking put into some of the joints, and you can see some of the joints are open. Those would need to be repointed, but in general, the walls are in good condition. There's no differential settlement from the foundation around the perimeter. And especially, I think, when you consider the time that the building has sat there empty, it's in really good shape in terms of its physical condition. In terms of the exterior, the issues, it's all about one thing: water. Water ingress coming from the roof down through the building. These pictures show the drainage system from the roof. Around the perimeter above the cornice, there's a box gutter system where the water collects and then is drained through these rainwater leaders that are located at different points around the building. There we go. And some of them, you can see parts of them are completely decayed and missing. Some of them don't have leaders. Other leaders are rusted and deteriorated. So water is not draining properly from the building, and that's what that's causing is freeze-thaw effect when it gets absorbed into the brick or into the joints, where you get these kinds of cracks that occur near where water's coming down. You also get those issues around the perimeter cornice because the gutter system is right behind here. And so that will have to be redone, the gutter system that drains the water as well as the leaders. And certainly these elements here that are made of terracotta are going to have to be replaced. I think we've estimated there's about a 25% replacement of these elements here. And we also have, where water has drained at the base of the building, there's plant growth. It's also kind of eroded the grade at the site there. So we want to regrade the site so the water drains naturally away from the building. In terms of the interior, I think I want to stress that it's physically in good shape. The windows are in generally good condition. You can see the natural finish and the condition of the glazing here, the simulated marble of the columns and of the wainscoting, the natural finish of the doors. So they're in pretty good condition. Once again, I think the key is where there's no water ingress, everything's intact. Where there is water ingress, as you can see here, where you have the upper level roof meeting with the lower level roof. So there's the base flashing issue where water's getting into that wall, and what that's doing, it's eroding the plaster here at that condition. It's eroded further down the wall and at this area here as well. So some of the marble has come off as well. So it's really pretty simple. It's about where water's come in, you get that kind of deterioration. Thankfully, it's only limited areas or limited corners of the building. Where there's not a water issue, everything appears to be okay. In terms of the building systems itself, the electrical, the mechanical, the plumbing, the life safety systems, some of those are non-existent. There are no exit signs in the building, I don't recall. Certainly it's going to depend upon what the building, how the building's going to be repurposed is going to impact what's going to have to happen in terms of these. But no matter what, they're all going to have to be dealt with. So some of the issues, you're going to have to replace they're going to need to be additional bathrooms, sanitary service, water service, pipework within the building, hot water heaters. We're going to need to additionally provide access. We would recommend the installation of an elevator here, regardless of the use. So with electrical service, the fire alarms, and those kinds of life safety things, regardless of the use, would have to be redone.
Sir, you're at about 5 minutes until our regular meeting starts.
Okay. So just to wrap things up, I think it's important to go, the structural engineer, the basic structure of the building is in excellent, is stable, very good condition with a few minor areas that require attention. And his main comment was, it's very feasible. The building will allow minimal structural repairs to allow for this building to be renovated for community reuse. So we find that the Carnegie Library is a significant feature, a historic resource for the community. It has architectural integrity. It's in good structural condition. And the damage is really associated with water. So we feel it's an excellent candidate for adaptive use. And then going forward, I think then to figure out what that adaptive use would be, and I know Mary's going to touch upon those, will be the implementation of a master plan where we explore possible options, consider the uses, and then base codes and pricing upon what those uses would be. So
Thank you, Steve. And I know I only have a minute, but I've handed out the master plan. And I think most of all is I want us to have some fun with this. I mean, people have been talking about the Carnegie, and we've had outside people, inside people, all sorts of people talk about it, but I don't know that we've ever really gone out to the community and said, what do you want to see in this building? What would work? And begin to dream and have some fun with it and ask our kids and our parents and our grandparents and friends and the whole region, what could this beautiful building house? And then back into some of this, figure out what we think might fit in the building and what might be some good uses. Come up with, say, 3 top priorities, get them costed out, and then start to go out to look for those uses and the dollars to make it happen.